Welcome to the LEC podcast, a show about growing in connection with the earth and communities around us. Brought to you by the Living Earth Center in Mankato, Minnesota. I am your host and producer, Jacob Bases. Let's get growing. Update time. The growing season is over. The community farm and garden are closed for the season. We are proud to share that we have donated 3,456 pounds of food to community partners like FOCP or Echo Food Shelf. Thursday, the 15th, is Give to the Max Day. We will be streaming, looking to grab donors, as well as spread our social media reach. Drop in if you see the stream and say hello. Last, we have our winter solstice event, December 21st, with a solstice ritual, reflection, bonfire, and optional winter hike. We hope to see you all there. Our first guest is our own executive director, Laura Marsala, to introduce herself and give some top-level perspective on the Living Earth Center.
So I'm Laura, and I'm the executive director of the Living Earth Center. And we're a small, growing, budding nonprofit located in Mankato, Minnesota. And what we do is literally and figuratively bring people together to share common ground. And for those that have been involved in the organization for a long time, they hear me say this all the time. But I think it's really important to explain what that actually means. And so what we do is we offer opportunities for people to come together and to grow food and to grow connection within community growing spaces. We run one of the largest community gardens in the state of Minnesota. It's about 2.5 acres. In addition to that, we manage the Blue Earth County Community Farm in partnership with Blue Earth County. And these various community growing spaces provide opportunities for community members to grow healthy produce and to address a lot of what we like to talk about as community health initiatives, the ways that we can build and cultivate healthy community, not only by providing healthy produce, fruits and vegetables and things like that, but also providing healthy atmosphere that people are allowed to come in and be who they are. And if they want to get outside and have sunshine, they can be outside. They can get exercise by growing food and tending a garden. But if they also want to be part of a community, there are a lot of different opportunities for people to come together from every walk of life. And be able to either have a community garden plot or to volunteer in the gardens and farm that we offer with volunteer opportunities, or participate in the number of different workshops and events that we have. So it is literally a community growing space in the sense that we grow food, but it's also figuratively a way in which we're cultivating a healthy community and bringing a lot of different people in every way, shape, and form.
It's very interesting. Laura, could you maybe tell us a little bit about how you came into this community and how after you came to this community, you came into the Living Earth Center specifically?
Yeah. So I was born and raised in Denver, Colorado, just outside of Denver, Colorado, and I was lucky enough to grow up in an area where I had access to land. I grew up in a space where my mom gardened, and we had a number of apple trees, and so I had access at a very early age of being able to watch something be planted into the ground and watch that grow, and have the excitement of seeing seeds sprouting, and then turning into plants, and then those plants turning into vegetables that I could harvest, and also be in this environment in which I could connect with the earth and with the land. And it wasn't until I was an adult that I realized just how important that connection actually is. And so my history in terms of how I landed in Mankato is takes me all the way to Lugano, Switzerland. And from Lugano, Switzerland, I lived for a short period of time in sub-Saharan Africa. And then I moved from essentially rural Malawi to rural Minnesota, Mankato. And what I think is so fascinating is I've always had this interest in this concept of cultivation, but also how growing things actually has the ability to bring people together. We see this in just about every culture where people that are farming or in agrarian societies, they're able to kind of come together over harvest. They're able to come together in terms of that food connection piece, and I think that it's just a really exciting thing. And so I had an opportunity. I lived on a farm for quite some time, where we had a huge garden, and we lived in what I would like to say, and I don't like the term harmony as much as we lived in balance with nature. We tried to do things that were, not only good for ourselves, but also had a long-term thought process in mind of how we could work with nature in order to have something that was sustainable, where our inputs and our outputs were in balance with each other. And as a result of that regenerative farming experience, I was able to find a job basically starting the Living Earth Center as a new nonprofit, but it had been a concept that had been going on since the 1990s. The School Sisters of Notre Dame, which is a Catholic women's order here in Mankato, wanted to start a nonprofit organization that was non-denominational, and it had the ability to continue what they were already doing, which is hosting one of the largest community gardens in all of Minnesota. But kind of the level up to that was figuring out ways that people could connect deeper with the land and also with each other. And I think those are the two magic ingredients. There's probably a couple of other special ingredients, but the two big ingredients I think for healthy communities are connection, but connection in a way in which there's people feel like they have a sense of place. And that can be in the physical sense. If at our community garden sites, if people come and they're actually growing something in their little 10 by 10 plot, they are connecting with with that place. They are connecting with the soil. They're connecting with that, or with the the actual physical land. But I think it extends beyond that. When you have connection also with each other, I think something really interesting happens. Um, you have the ability to extend that sense of place not only to a physical location, but to the people that inhabit that physical location. And I think that's a really important ingredient. I think the other healthy ingredient is the concept of reciprocity, the ways in which we can share ideas and knowledge, not from a hierarchical perspective, but from a way in which we can actually come together and learn from one another, and help each other. There's an enormous amount of cross-pollination that takes place when people come together and share ideas. And the cool thing about Living Earth Center, and then one of the reasons why I took the position as the executive director, is because I think that those two magical ingredients are kind of the center points of what Living Earth Center offers to the community. An opportunity to come together and to connect with the land, to connect with food, and to connect with the people around, connect with each other. But then also an opportunity to participate in that concept of reciprocity. When we care for the land, it cares for us. When we care for each other, there's something really important that happens. And community growing spaces, I believe wholeheartedly, are essential, not just added bonuses, but are essential to healthy, thriving local communities. And so that's one of the reasons why I continue to, to continue to be in this position. It's one of the reasons why I continue to wake up every day and be excited about coming to work and working with the amazing staff that we have, because I think we provide something that is not only really cool, but I think is also essential to the long-term health of the Mankato area community.
I really like what you said about the idea of long-term health, because I don't think anyone would really disagree that when we brought supermarkets into existence, that brought food to a lot of people and was a great step forward for access.
Mhm.
But we did lose, like, that's where we gathered around food at that point. So there is a connection that, it's only been, 60 years or so.
Yeah.
So like repairing that connection is something that it makes sense to do.
Yeah.
You mentioned a number of things, and the one that I think was probably I needing a little bit more clarity
Mhm.
was you got into a little bit about how like the community connecting programs like Common Grounds,
Mhm.
like what they're for, but bring that back into the overall, like talk about those in context of the Living Earth Center for just a
Okay.
moment.
Yeah. So as I mentioned, the concept of providing a sense of connection, I think that is, like I said, a magic ingredient for healthy, thriving communities. Um, and I think that one of the ways that happens is through shared activities, and the concept of figuring out where we, meaning the collective we, that have varied backgrounds and varied hardships and varied successes and things along those lines, how we can come together and figure out what that commonality is. And in a community growing space, physically, the commonality is that we're sharing land. We're all is fair in love and tomato growing, and so we offer that space where the common ground is just automatic and simplified. But I think Living Our Center likes to expand that concept of common ground to a lot of the different activities that we do. And so one of those things could potentially be, our community common ground series, where we bring two very different, groups that are experts that talk about something. Usually, it's something that's linked to, a following or a nonprofit or something along those lines, where we bring two very unique groups together to figure out what that common ground is. And I think that there's something really interesting about what happens when we figure out what common grounds are. If you're figuring out the common ground between punk rock and pollinator gardens, those might be two different groups that would have normally not crossed paths. But there's something that happens when we're all in a physical space and we're sharing that reciprocity of ideas. There's a connection that starts to form. And what we found out of these experiences is that people tend to have more support, support for each other. We find that there's a lot more cross pollination in terms of how we can help, bring all of these different organizations or these different ideas up. But in addition to that, it creates what I kind of envision as like this weaving of threads, and someone who would have normally been in a circle with another person now suddenly it has some sort of connection. And I think that connection is super important for how we kind of all move and operate as a community. So I don't know if that's a little bit too like far out, but I think the concept is there. I think the other thing that happens when we do this is that there's a lot of people that are coming from different backgrounds, and it's an equity issue. I think people that have access suddenly to land and to opportunities to exchange knowledge, that have access to the table, are now suddenly brought into a community atmosphere, and it kind of eliminates the concept of an us versus them or an other, no matter what that could be. Whether that's having people that are from an immigrant or refugee background, or people that are from an elderly community, or people that are from an LGBTQ community. It just depends on all of the different backgrounds that people are coming with. When you share that common ground, that thread is linked, and I think that it just creates a much more stable community environment and social environment.
I think that explains it very nicely. It connects it to the mission statement.
Yeah.
A couple times in your introduction, you referred to the Living Earth Center as small, growing, or budding. Maybe you could give us a few insights into what that growth
Yeah.
might look like if the Living Earth Center takes its values and mission and pushes it forward. Where are
Yeah.
we looking to go?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So we were founded by the School Sisters of Notre Dame, and I think it's really important to note that the School Sisters of Notre Dame are a Catholic women's order. But what's fascinating is that they are. It's not a religious organization in that sense. We are founded in the concept and the charism, what the sisters call the charism of care for the earth and care for each other. And I think that's a really, really important foundation because it allows for us to sprout from that, seed. That's the basic seed: care for the earth and care for each other. And, with that basic foundation, we've been able to grow over the years. We were founded officially as a nonprofit in 2017. And since then have been able to grow and develop. We've taken a step away from the school sisters in the sense that we are, have physically moved our office spaces away from the School Sisters of Notre Dame for no other reason than they are no longer at their, their Good Counsel campus anymore. And they had the founders of the Living Earth Center really had the foresight to say, we want to be able to create a space that allows for people to connect in this way. And so in order to do that, we have to have a nonprofit that is non-denominational. Essentially, it allows for people to come together to care for the land, to care for each other, and to, in a lot of sense, create a sense of shared. We talk about justice on a regular basis, but that justice also includes food security, food justice, in addition to land justice. And so, as we kind of are, step by step, year by year, growing, I think the main points that we're trying to really bring up are making sure that the concepts of those special ingredients of connection and reciprocity are equitable as possible. And so I think the real focus in looking forward is focusing on food justice in addition to food security, but in addition to that, also land access. It's incredibly difficult for people to access land to be able to grow food. If you're living in an apartment complex, or if you have, you don't have space, or you just don't have the equity to be able to put into land, it's not. There's a large portion of the population that literally cannot physically connect with the land in the ways that we'd like to be able to offer. And so I think moving forward, really what our goals are to create that sense of connection and right relationship, but to make that equitable as possible. So we'd like to continue to expand our community gardens where people can come and they grow food for themselves and maybe their friends and family. But I think we'd like to also be able to expand that to be able to offer land for people that wouldn't normally have access to land to be able to start to grow and hopefully create easy entry points for people to enter the local food economy. So if they wanted to grow, traditionally relevant crops or something along those lines that can't be found here in the Mankato area, we'd like to be able to offer for people to be able to do that. If someone who is really interested in having that connection with the land, even starting to farm or something along those lines, farmland is not accessible at the moment. And so if we're able to create space for people to maybe have the beginnings of starting a farm or growing operation, we'd like to be able to do that. And it kind of creates, again, it kind of filters back to this core that we're really creating a sense of common ground and doing that with the special ingredients of connection and reciprocity. I don't know. Does that cover it?
I think that does. It really
Is it too vague?
It isn't. I think it's really top level. If you want to go a little bit into, an example, I believe, from what I've seen here of that working already is the Emerging Growers program. Yeah. Maybe you could just talk about that program for a little bit.
Yeah. So the Emerging Growers program that we currently have is in conjunction with the Blue Earth County Community Farm and the space that we offer out there. And we have a number of different plots that are a little bit larger than the community garden spaces. And the idea behind that, we're still at like kind of the base level right now. We're still at the budding level of this program. But the idea behind that would be that anyone in the community, and I mean anyone in the community that would like to have access to land that they can grow food that then can be sold either at a farm stand or, hopefully at a farmer's market or even infused within the local food economy here, the grocery stores and restaurants. We'd like to create pathways for that. We already have a number of growers that are currently at the farm that are able to do that. Although it's a program that we're still in the infancy stages of testing out and trying to figure out what the challenges and the barriers are so that we can create a really robust program moving into the future where in this, Mankato is a very agricultural area, right? We're surrounded by fields and agriculture. But I think what Living Earth Center really is focused on doing is creating pathways for people to be able to enter that local food economy and to build that local food economy in an equitable and just way. And so that's one of the ways that we're doing that is through the Emerging Growers Program. Long term would probably be to, acquire some additional land so that we can, again, help people be able to connect with the land, with the earth in that way, and be able to have some additional and expanded economic pathways into the local food economy, if that makes sense.
It does. Thanks for clarifying that. And maybe just kind of like in closing this segment, you could talk about what it is that you personally do to connect to the land here and how you find yourself connecting to this community here in Mankato.
One other thing that I forgot to mention, and I just remembered, is that looking into the future too, I think we're probably going to be looking at ways that we can help other organizations or communities, whether that's school communities or organizations, neighborhoods, create community growing spaces so that it's not just that you have to come to Living Earth Center to have a garden. What we'd like to do is to be able to work with communities to help set those up and manage community growing spaces as well. We do currently work with the Homestead Apartment Complex, which is a local apartment complex here that does not all residents, but some, have are in low income housing. But the idea is that we can bring that connection to communities rather than communities having to try to access it somewhere else. And so that's another kind of access point that we'd like to focus on, in addition to land access and food security. We'd like to be able to start to help communities develop these community growing spaces as well. In terms of what I do, I have a yard that has a diversity of different things that are growing in it. I try really hard to have a front yard garden that doesn't always look totally managed in the way that maybe is the traditional American way of managing the yard. But I think what I like to do is create a space that I can invite people into. In the sense that I do that is, I'll give you an example. When I first moved to my current house, I put up cucumbers and tomatoes, and I grew garlic and onions just in my front yard. It was almost next to the road, and I had a lot of people come up and say, "Oh my gosh, you're going to have so many issues with deer, and I've never seen vegetables grown in the front yard like this." And what was really interesting is that as I was out in my front yard tending the garden that I was setting up, not only was it an opportunity to talk with my neighbors that were passing and to have conversation, but it was also an opportunity to share some of that produce. So they would walk by and I'd be able to hand them a tomato and we'd start a conversation. And so that connection point was made, right? And what I think is really interesting is when that connection point happens, some other things happen too. I don't spray my dandelions. I rarely mow my lawn. I'm trying to infuse more clover and native pollinators into my landscape, generally speaking. But it also gives me an opportunity when neighbors come by to be able to have a conversation about why that is. And what I think is really interesting is through that way of doing things, I was able to connect with a neighbor who attended a pollinator class, a workshop at the Living Earth Center, and subsequently stopped all spraying of all of her yard as a result of that. And so I think that connection is the entry point, and in that connection, there's a shared understanding of knowledge or an exchange of knowledge and interest, and then from there. I think action actually happens when people have access to information and knowledge that's not forced in a forced down your throat. I think that a lot of meaningful change and organic change really starts to take place, and I think that's kind of the solution to a lot of the challenges that we have. So that's what I do in my own kind of backyard. I do not have a green thumb. It doesn't mean just because I grow cucumbers doesn't mean that they were, they were great. I I'm connected with a lot of people who know how to grow things really, really well. But I think more than anything, there's no such, what do they say? There's no mistakes in gardening, just experiments. So I'm an experimenter all the time, just trying things, seeing how they grow. So that's what I do.
Yeah, cool. Well, thank you so much. It was
Yeah.
really nice getting to know you a little bit better,
Yeah.
and I think we're all better for it. Uh, for our second segment, we have Ferdinand, one of the growers out at the Blue Earth County Community Farm, here to talk about his experience looking for land access in Minnesota and how he's worked with the Living Earth Center. Welcome, Ferdinand.
Yeah, thank you, Jacob, for giving me the opportunity to give a story about myself and how I started farming, especially in America. My name again is Ferdinand, as you mentioned. I grew up in Kenya. The setup in Kenya, we used to do farming. Every homestead, they used to do their own farming, more especially in the village or up country, as we may call it. And I was born and grew up seeing my family doing it. I continued doing it because we used to get our own food, which we used to consume from the garden, with buying a few things like salt, cooking oil, and sugar, but the rest come from our own farm. Even we used to have cows and chicken, everything almost. We used to get it from our own homestead. So coming to America, since I grew up in that setup, I had interest to start doing farming. Luckily enough, I arrived here, found in Minnesota. People were doing farming, more especially Kenyans, and they used to grow the vegetable I used to love while I used to grow up in Kenya. So I dived in and started doing it, and I've been practicing for over 15 years, or the entire life I've lived in the America. And those food has helped me to feed myself and my family because before I had a family, I used to grow for myself. But when my family came, I extended doing it more. But being that said, it's becoming scarce, not enough.
Sure. And when you first came to America and you decided that you wanted to grow food, what was the journey like to find access to land?
Was kind of difficult. It was not easy. Actually, luckily my host had it, but when I moved down to south, I live in St. Peter, it was hard to find where to farm. I struggled asking everyone because I did not want to stop doing farming. Luckily enough, I've met one person where I used to work. He introduced me to the community garden in St. Peter. I got a few plots, but then it used to be enough. People were not doing it. I grabbed enough to enable me get enough food for my family. As the community continued growing, it's becoming small and small. Then my friend Joseph, who moved from South Minnesota as well, father in Windham, he came here to Mengero, actually introduced me to Living Heart Center, which they were offering a new place to farming. I requested him to put my name, and they gave me some plot to do farming, which really I enjoyed this first season, and I got enough produce from there to enable feed my family.
Sure. Um, and can you just contextualize how much land it takes to do that? How many folks are in your family and uh, the amount of food that you're, you know, pulling out of the earth?
My family is I have a family of seven, including my father-in-law and my parents as well. They live with us. As my I have my brother as well. So in Saint Peter, so we are about a family of uh, nine. And both me and my brother we plant vegetables, which always runs us the whole season. For example, like the one we harvested now, we frost it. It's gonna run us past next year, maybe up to October. and the excess we share with friends and the other people who don't have uh, the culture of food. On that, I can add the size of space I do plant or I planted this season was 20, 20 by 40, about three to four plots, which supplied me that enough food to feed my family the whole season of winter
Sure.
and part of summer.
You've mentioned a couple times that you've had some to share, and that there is otherwise a need. Are there a lot of folks who just don't have access to these foods because they don't either have like the time or capacity or access to the land or to farm it?
Yeah, the demand for cultural food is high because it's not all can be able to afford or to access a place to farm. So still there's a demand high out there. But if we have enough, we can plant even for sale because those who don't have access, they can buy from us. And in that way, they can earn a living as well so that we can be able to support our family as well financially.
Yeah. And what is it like for them now? They're where are they getting these foods if they're getting them at all?
They get from open market some, but it's not enough. I can say when I came, that's 2008, 2009, 10. I used to have a small garden. Wasn't enough for me. I used to go to the farmers market. Sometimes I get them, sometimes I don't. If I get them, sometimes they are not good the way I like them. So I prefer growing them myself. I fetch them myself. There's the style you can fetch them and get good food. Because the farmers market, normally what was the problem? Once I buy them, I go home and start sitting down the whole day, start making them. But if I fetch them one way, go home, prep them, took me less minutes getting them done than the one from the farmer's market.
How does that affect your family? Is it something that you all do together, the growing of the food, or is it you who's doing this?
I do with my wife and actually my brother, although he does do for his house, but we help each other to get this done. I training my kids as well. I don't go by myself. I always take them to the garden to show them how to plant. Sometimes I show them how to harvest. So my family is being involved in this process.
Um, let's see. Can you give some examples of ways, like lessons that you have taken with you from your time farming in Kenya and how you apply them here to the landscape in Minnesota?
Yeah, back home or in Kenya where I grew up, we used to do kind of I call manual work. Use a shovel. You go into the garden and till manually, but here we use kind of tillable tools. Sometimes what we found out they don't work really good because the tillers we use, like tractors, they don't dig enough soil. So we have those shovels as well. We do manually, then we break the soil with the tillers so that we get rich soil when you plant. You need good roots. You don't want shallow soil. You want your roots to go down and get the best nutrients, and that's when you're gonna get good yields.
Um, and maybe if you could share uh, some of like an example of one of the dishes that you create and like what kind of flavor profile that might have. Um, uh, like one of the dishes that's important to your family.
The most staple food in my family, and I can mention this, we do cook at home 98%. We don't, I mean, we go restaurants once for a while, but most of the food we cook at home. And our staple food is ugali and the vegetables we get from our gardens. And those vegetables, we keep varying them. We have a different menu every evening for what type of vegetable you're gonna cook. Because I mentioned we cook saga, which we call spider plant. We cook managu. We cook collard green, cabbage. Sometimes we cook beans. And among other vegetables, normally we do plant. So those vegetables we do alternate every evening, as I mentioned, and uh, they provide us with pest. I, I reversed this. They act as a side vegetable is a side dish, goes with the ugali, and sometimes we prep stew meat and sometimes roast chicken, which goes along with them.
Sure. That's actually it's very surprising to me. I feel like uh in like because I've done no farming at all. Like I don't imagine a plot that's as small as the one that you've talked about producing a different kind of side dish almost every night and being able to feed, 6 people. It's really amazing that that's available to you. That said, uh, what are your plans for farming in the future? Would you like to see um, more, or you know, how would you like to see your ability to work with the earth grow?
Uh, First of all, I thank the Living Heart for providing us the opportunity to do farming. I would love to have extra space for more vegetables. More especially, I'm planning if I can grow and sell. That will help me either financially and or can help because there's a lot of going on in my family. We need more finance to able to sustain ourselves economically, to end the struggle every day. We don't want to eat paycheck to paycheck. At least we want to have some savings for yourself,
Hmm.
for your family as well. There's school fees or tuition, we can call it, for the kids when they grow up. We planning to start saving for them. It's a good opportunity to start working on ways to raise funds for the future generation.
Sure. Um, yeah, I I guess thank you for that statement. And is there anything you would like to say to the listeners, kind of in closing, um, about the Living Earth Center or about land access, or basically just anything you'd like to say before we wrap up?
Yeah, my comment goes out to the listeners and to the Living Arts Center as well. Getting access to land is really critical to us because even the information is well, it's not easy, but through Living Arts Center, we getting this opportunity to start accessing some extra land for ourselves and also to start getting more information. But still, I can request more done to it so that we can get enough information. For example, those emerging farmers who need how to farm, still the different setup need different information. Where I grew up, I used to have information right there. But here in America, even how to own the land, it's not easy. So I need to get more information on how to go that, navigate that system, at least to acquire some extra acres of land to continue practicing planting this culture of foods.
Um, well, thanks for coming on, and we appreciate talking to you, Ferdinand.
Thank you, Jacob, for having me, and I appreciate for the opportunity to share my story and to share the good food we normally plant. I can call it the vegetables. They are healthy food, which gonna be able in the future sustain the health of our bodies because our bodies need to be fueled by the healthy vegetables. That's what I can comment on that. Thank you again.
Thanks for listening. We hope you enjoyed, and if you haven't already, please subscribe. If you find yourself in alignment with our mission and values, the Living Earth Center is a 501c3 nonprofit. Consider donating. You can find more information at livingearthcentermn.org.